All right. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the PCC Podcast. Super excited to be streaming here for y'all. So, for today, I'm going to address if you feel like you need to see faster results. And I think I'm really looking at this in the lens of our clients because this is really common that we're doing all the things, we feel like we're following the plan, and we just want results to happen a little bit quicker. And there's a couple of options that we have for that. So, 3 things that I'm going to outline today. I'm sure there's more, but these are the top 3 that I was able to just isolate from years and years in the trenches. So, if you feel like you are doing the plan, you're doing the workouts, you're doing the cardio, you're hitting the calories, the macros, you're being relatively consistent, and the scale is just being its little stubborn self. We often think of this as a plateau. And actually, in the last solo episode that I recorded all about tracking your macros, I actually talked about how plateaus, it's not that I don't believe that they exist. Plateaus do exist, but they're far less common than you actually think they are. I promise you, they're way less common because a plateau is really just a variable yet to be managed. So what do I mean by that? It means that when we think that we're stuck, we think we've pulled every lever to see progress, that we have no hope but to try something different. The real answer is let's go back to these 3 things and make sure that we're covering those bases, because that's going to accelerate our progress more than anything. So plateaus, they exist, far less common than you think. So number 1, let's talk about the most important thing I would say to see faster results. And this is you're gonna roll your eyes at me, but I want you to really lean into the possibility that this could be part of it. Check your basics at a new level of detail that you haven't before. So your basics are your adherence to your diet, and I'll break down within all of those exactly what that looks like. Your step count, your water, your sleep, your strength training, and your stress management. So we know these as the big rocks to our fat loss journey. These are the 6 things that must be done in order for us to see results, period, at 80% consistency or more. So number 1 would be looking at that consistency percentage. So something that we often do with our clients, at least what I've done in the past, is I've kind of pulled each habit out, and this takes a lot of time, to be honest, but I'll pull each habit out and I'll count out of the last 30 days, how many days did we hit it? And I'll calculate the percentage for each of those 6 things. And what I find is most often we're not being as consistent as we think we are. And sometimes that hard data is very telling, because we can feel like we're doing it most of the time, but 80% is a lot of the time. It is 5.6 out of 7 days per week. So we don't have a ton of room for error there. In addition to that, it's the quality at which we are executing these basics that is really important. I think intentionality is key here, especially if we're breaching a plateau, to really get past it. So making sure that it truly is that 80% across the board with all those habits is number 1. Number 2, with checking these basics, is just the details, the finer level of details. So let me go into it, right? So we've calculated hard data. We're hitting the targets 80% or more of the time. Well, first thing I would do to see faster results is tweak that up to 90%. Just be a little bit more consistent as a whole. So that's really number 1, is the consistency percentage. Calculate the hard data, take the time to do the math, see where you're really at compared to the goalpost of 80%. I promise you, most of you who do this will be below the 80% goalpost. But for those of you who are at 80, let's get to 90. And if you're at that 90 or above, let's move on to number 2. Number 2 for the basics is the finer details. So I'm going to go through for each one of the 6 here. Number 1 is your diet, your macros, your micros, your calories, whatever you're doing. So For our clients, this really varies. Like our clients can be losing fat with mindful eating. They could be losing fat with calorie tracking, with macro tracking. And that's kind of the order. So habit tracking, kind of like a base meal plan default diet situation would be kind of the least exact way of going about this. Calories and protein would be probably second. And then macro tracking would be third. And there's varying degrees to which we can approach macro tracking in terms of intensity. And a lot of people have like an aversion to tracking like super diligently, but I think it's honestly something that great that you can do for a short period of time to really learn what adherence looks like. It's just important we keep a distanced mindset from it so we don't get so attached and obsessive, right? So there's a lot of different, first of all, layers of how are we sticking to our diet that we can be more adherent with. So if we're not all the way at the end of that spectrum, we can move up a step, right? If we're just doing habit tracking, we can maybe move into calories and protein and quantify more. If we're just doing calories and protein, maybe we could go into macro tracking so we know more of what's going into our body. And if we're just tracking macros, maybe we dial in the adherence level there. Now, for those who are tracking your macros, you're adherent, and you're like, what gives? Let's look at the quality of our food. Let's look at, is at least 80% of our food whole, nutrient-dense, unprocessed foods? It's honestly pretty hard to do because our world is littered with packaged processed foods. And it's if we are not seeing the results fast enough that we want, these are little levers that we can pull. You don't have to pull all of them, right? And I urge you when you're listening to this episode, if you're not in this category of like, I'm doing all these and I'm not seeing progress, like, then I wouldn't stress yourself out over the things that I'm mentioning because it's lowest hanging fruit, right? Let's go from the things that are going to make the biggest difference first and go from there. Second thing would be your steps. So your step count is really just a gradient, right? You can have a varying amount of steps per day because you could have a goal of 5,000, you could have a goal of 10,000, 15,000, right? So for this, I would say making sure that your step goal is, if you're not seeing the progress that you want, above 7,500 a day, and you might want to increase that a little bit more if you are just not getting the output that you need in a fat loss phase. And if you're like relatively lean, or if you're kind of shaving out the last 10, 15 pounds, it's probable that your step count might need to be in the 10, 12, 14,000 per day amount. And that's a push, right? That's hard, especially if you don't have a walking pad. That could be hard to do. And if you don't live in a walkable environment. So you kind of got to figure out if that's feasible for you. But if it is, I would dial that up. Water intake. So this one's fairly simple, but just again, making sure the consistency is there. Are you getting enough of it truly? And then your sleep. This is one where it's like sleep 7 to 9 hours a night, right? But also make sure that it's a quality 7 to 9 hours. And the real way that you analyze that is just asking yourself, am I waking up feeling well rested, or do I need a nap during the day? Do I still feel tired when I wake up? Am I dependent on caffeine? And if that is the case, then I would pay more attention to sleep hygiene and work on that more and more so that you get the best quality sleep possible and building a routine around that. And then lastly, stress. Stress is interesting. So stress would be, I think this one is all about intentionality. So if you are doing everything that I said under every other category in the realm of the consistency percentages and the nuanced little details, then there is a high likelihood that you're carrying a big mental burden of like, I'm doing all this, I'm stressing myself out over my fitness journey, and I'm not seeing results. And there is no great way to put this, but the biggest thing that could lead to you actually seeing faster results if you are that person is to let go of the damn outcome. What I mean by that is you're so attached, you have a tight grip on, I have to do all these things and I have to see this result from my efforts, that it's stressing you and your body out to the max, where your body's stress response is actually the only thing holding back the results that you want to see. It sounds woo-woo, but like your stress response creates a shit ton of inflammation. So that is very much a reality that could be true. And so you have to loosen the grip. Loosen the grip. And what that means, loosening the grip, does not mean you stop doing the things, but it means you release your attachment to the outcome that it has to happen tomorrow. Because if it has to happen tomorrow, then tomorrow comes and you're disappointed, then you're more stressed out, then there's more pressure, and then there's all of this cascade, right? So if we were to just say, I'm going to do these things because they fuel me today for the goals I have tomorrow and a year from now and 10 years from now. And when the results come, they will come. I trust that they will come. And what I will say is that tight grip on the outcome, I can share from my own personal experience. I struggle with this in many areas of my life, but that tight grip on the outcome comes from a lack of trust. And that could be trust in the process because you have a rocky history with it. It could be a lack of trust in yourself, your ability to see the results come true, or your own trust with the fact that you can maintain it, or trust with a practitioner who's guiding you. Do you really trust and let go of that responsibility to your coach? Because the role of a coach is to take that stress off of you. You're not supposed to be worrying about it in this way, but many of us still do because we are not willing to fully trust that process. But that could be the thing that really messes us up mentally and prevents the results from happening. I know that was not expected, right? But that's a big one. So release the outcome, still take the actions, and focus on the intentions behind the action rather than what they're bringing you, the results they're bringing you, and the results will come faster. And so those are two things of the three that you need to do to see faster results. And then if you're doing all of that, then there's two routes here that we could really go. They're kind of under the same category. But what I have written down here is less is more. So typically, if you're doing all those things, it could be a sign that your body needs a diet break or a refeed or something to like pull back before we keep pushing. Because oftentimes dieting we think of as just like cut calories, do more cardio, and we just do more. To what end, right? And you can't just push your body without a little pullback first. And so it's really a dance, right? It's a dance. It's not just plow straight through. It's push, rest, recover, push, rest, recover. So a diet break, a refeed, a deload week, something of that nature might be in your future. If you've done all these things and you need to see faster results because you've been pushing and you're stuck. And that kind of goes alongside my general recommendation of just find a coach, just have support to give you that call. Because I'll be honest, we are horrible. We as a collective humanity are horrible at knowing when to actually give ourselves the rest that we need. For example, my husband is training for an ultramarathon and his body was breaking down on him this past week to the point where it was affecting his mentality. And I was asking, what have you been eating? How many miles have you been running? What's your recovery like? And he just felt like trash. And I was like, you need to take a rest day and potentially a deload week. And he was like, no, I'm good. I'll push through. That's always our response. I'll just push through. Then I'll take the rest. And sometimes just hiring that coach can alleviate that for you. So he does have a coach, and his coach said, hey, here's more food, eat more food, take that rest day, take that break. And that's what prevents us from burning out, injuring ourselves, just completely tanking our whole situation, because we are not the best person to make that call. Sometimes it takes that objective third party to do that for us. So find guidance. If you're freaking yourself out over this, you're stressed to the max on, I need to see these results, and you're putting in so much effort and it's not happening, you need to know when it's time to push and when it's time to pull back. And that just takes guidance sometimes. So, drop the ego and ask for help. So those are the three things that you need to see faster results. I hope that this was helpful for our clients and for people that aren't our clients at this time, and really just helps you see that there are layers to this stuff. And it's not about just going balls to the wall and you'll see some results. It's how can we kind of grade ourselves into this and do what's necessary to see results, but not go farther than that, right? So thank you guys so much for listening. If you would like to request a topic that I can talk on this podcast, would love your feedback. Send me a message on Instagram. Let me know you're a podcast listener. That would mean a lot to me to know feedback from the people that really do listen to this. It would be so helpful for me to generate more ideas that would benefit you all. So thanks for listening. Send me some feedback, and I'll see you in the next one.